Top stuff. All right. Well, hi, Greg. Thanks for being so willing to spend some time to talk to me about Coin Crypt. On the off chance anybody just stumbles across this not knowing anything at all, could you give me a sentence or two about yourself in self-introduction?
Sure. My name is Greg Lobanov. I'm a game designer from Philadelphia, now living in Vancouver, Canada, and I make colorful story adventure games, usually 2D adventure games.
Wonderful. That is beautifully concise. Thank you.
Yeah.
All right. So, first off, congratulations on what I think is the 10th birthday of Coin Crypt. I find that
Thank you.
release dates in this subgenre are actually really hard to pin down. I've got November 18th, 2013 down as like the Steam early access release date, but was it available even before then, or was that the actual like first time
It was
people
it
could
was
get
sort
it?
of yeah. I had it up for free. Like I was on TakeSource, which is like a game makers forum type thing. So I had copies of it available up on there for a long time since like probably May or April of the same year.
Mm.
Um, But I do think like the Steam Early Access release is like a meaningful date to me because that was when like there was a point where like I'd been working on it early in the year, then I kind of like stopped putting up updates out and I was actually working on it in secret and building it up a lot more. And then what I put on Steam was kind of like a not quite a 1.0 because it was an early access, but it definitely was like this actually feels like something I would sell. Like this is a game now. Yeah.
Awesome. Okay, that's good to know. Because I chose Coin Crypt as being the first entry in this like roguelike deck builder chronology I'm doing, I wanted to kind of pin that down because it's fascinating to me that stuff like even the first Super Mario Brothers we don't actually concretely know when it came out in North America.
Yeah.
So yeah, I just thought it was quite interesting.
Yeah.
All right. So yeah, keeping that in mind, it being kind of the first one in my mind, because CoinCrypt's like the first roguelike deck builder that isn't based on some existing physical property. I was curious, like, what your influences were, like, video game or board game or otherwise. Where did CoinCrypt come from?
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot that I could talk about. I think the heart of it was like I had recently gotten really into Dominion. I thought that was really
Mm.
cool. Deck building board game, and I also was really obsessed with Spelunky, which was like a
Mm.
roguelike at the time. And I mean, there are a lot of games I was playing that I was really liking, but I think those two just happened to hit each other the right way in my brain, where I was kind of seeing like, could something happen here? Um, I had some really meaningful conversations when I was at the Game Developers Conference earlier that year in like March. I talked to a couple of like I was just starting to think about like maybe making a card game project, like just like very loosely thinking about what that could be. Talked and just ended up having a lot of like fun conversations with other designers about just like what they were excited about in games at the time, which kind of got me really inspired. And in particular, I'd want to mention that like I got to talk to Terry Kavanagh, who at the time I think was known
Oh,
for Super Hexagon. Later, he got with Dicey Dungeons, which is like an awesome
yeah.
roguelike game. At the time, he was working on his own like card game RPG, which like never saw the light of day. But he showed me some prototypes of it, and that also kind of got me like thinking about just some things about like how cards and RPG stuff could mix. And some of my early builds I was actually sending to him of Coin Crypt, like just to get his like opinion on to see like I don't know, yeah. So definitely was inspired by that. And then also a little bit of like Yu-Gi-Oh! In
Oh
the
yeah.
sense of like a world where like this one card game somehow like determines the fate of everyone's life. I thought that was like a fun start for a game. So all of those things kind of together.
Right. All these things kind of coalesce together. That's really cool to hear about Terry Kavanagh, though, because Dicey Dungeons, I think, is an incredible game. But I had no
Yes.
idea that even way before that came out, he was already kind of in that sort of mind space. So, kind of in the run up to like this interview, I was playing like several of your other games, and I was really impressed that coming from things like Assassin Blue to like RPG stuff like Phantasmagoria, Coin Crypt, well, all these games are made in Game Maker Studio, right?
Yeah.
And I was really impressed with just how you managed to like wrangle so much, so many different effects out of the engine. you have a devlog for Coin Crypt that's still online on Tumblr. And one of my favorite posts on it is about how you created the illusion of 3D, even though it's mostly a 2D oriented engine. And I was wondering, are there any other bits of like development wizardry that you're really proud of getting from the engine, or anything from Coin Crypt's development that's carried into your later games?
A lot of stuff is carried over for sure. I mean, yeah, the fake 3D thing, like I'm making a 3D game in Game Maker now as my current project. So I guess you could say kind of like the starting seed of that came from like the stuff I learned to make Coin Crypt in the first place. Yeah, like, and I mean there were like cool lighting effects in that game. Like there's like the way the light kind of goes around corners when you're in the underground, and yeah, and even like the fake 3D on the coins, because they're just like a sprite and just like stacks it to make it look thick and stuff. I
That's
mean,
incredible
it's
to me.
it's like nothing super revolutionary, I would say. But yeah, I mean, it's a lot of trickery. Like in my head, I had a really clear idea of what I wanted the game to look like. So it wasn't like I was it wasn't like a technical exercise just to see what's the coolest thing I can make this do. It was really like, I really want the game to look like this. How do I make this happen on the screen was kind of like where all that stuff came from. So I don't think anything, if you like pull out and look at it, is that exciting by itself. But I definitely I've always been excited about like just doing cool art direction and solving problems to achieve art direction.
Yeah, okay, that makes a lot of sense. The coins not being 3D is the kind of detail where, unless no one tells you, you'll never notice, I feel like.
Sure.
All right, sweet. Another thing I read on the devlog was that the game didn't always have the combat pace that it currently has. I've only ever played Coin Crypt as it currently exists now, basically. But from what I can tell, at different times it was both even faster than it currently is, and at another time almost completely turn-based. And given that those earlier versions are no longer playable, could you tell me a little bit about the original system you envisioned for Coin Crypt and how it settled on the pace it now has?
Yeah, so I guess like there is in the game, there is like a checkbox for like an easy mode, and that actually does make it turn based, sort of, but like really badly. So I think like there's a lot of stuff that like is going on here that it would take me some thinking to unpack. But like when I was like, okay, it's like now, like, okay, 10 years later, looking at this game and looking at every other deck building roguelike that came out afterward and was like way cooler, I think it was a mistake to make the game not turn based.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I think so. Well, like again, I had no point of reference for this, right? Like I had been playing board games, and that inspired me to make this game. But when I was getting into it, it was so vast and complicated. Like there were just so many different systems interacting, and I think as a designer, I didn't have as much confidence that I was going to make something that was like so perfect, like mathematically perfect, you know, where all the numbers worked out really well.
Yeah.
And so I think the kind of live actionness of it, like was, I mean, I don't know if I was thinking of it that way at the time, but looking back on it, I definitely feel that it was like a cheat to sort of like, you know, like, I don't know if there's enough going on here, but if you just don't have enough time to think about it, then it'll all kind of like feel cool. And I mean, the game was designed around that. Like it was a really early decision for the game to move like at that pace. So it was designed around it. I don't think like it's bad. Like if it had been a turn-based game, it would have been completely different. Like this game would not exist in the form that it is in. That's fair to say. But I do think like it was like, I don't know. Yeah, I think that's like one of the coolest things that games that came out after it did that I never did with this game was like really get into the math and like look at it as like a very pure like board game like game design thing. So I'll say that for starters. I think that was like a problem that was always going to happen to this game because it's asking you to think so hard about like so many things so quickly. There's like no way for you to process it. And people who play the game a lot, I think, like once they start to see the shape of everything, there is a lot about it that's really, really cool. But I guess like I think the live actionness of it like really hides that. You know, like it makes it really hard for people to penetrate into that like zone where they actually know what's going on.
Yeah.
So yeah, so branching off that, like yeah, playing with the pacing of it, I'm sure there were times when like I was tweaking how fast things are moving in the game to try to allow for stuff for you know, because it was way too hard. And so I was trying to make it easier, and trying to make it easier for people to parse. And I think, yeah, like that easy mode which does exist in the game, which does make it go kind of turn-based, but it's really broken. And the other thing that it kind of showcases is like how unbalanced a lot of the game is, because once you can think forever about everything,
Right.
like it's just like the numbers don't really work out as nicely as like you kind of wish they would, you know?
Yeah.
Because I mean it's not designed for turn-based stuff, but like I think that was an experiment. Like at one point that was like an idea I had. That was like, okay, what if this was just a turn-based game? I'll just turn off the timer and see what this turns into. And it was very like revealing for like a lot of weaknesses that were kind of present in the balance of it. I guess, yeah, I'm still really proud of it as a game. I think it's really, really cool. And like there's that decision to make it like kind of like an action, game. That's just a core pillar of the whole game. Everything is built around that. I think it's a solid structure around that idea. It's just one of those things where looking back, I'm like, this is one of those things that if I was starting over, maybe I wouldn't have done.
I see.
If that makes sense.
Really interesting to hear, though, because I feel like that live actionist is a very big part of Coin Crypt's identity. I would
Totally.
liken it to something like the active time battle in like early Final Fantasy games, where
Yeah.
well, you do have the turn-based nature of it, but there being some kind of time-based element ticking down does force you to make decisions that you would do differently if you had all the time in the world. But if you had all the time in the world, then it's no longer really the same game.
Yeah, it's true. Like that's totally true. And actually, now you mentioned that too, because you played some of the games that I did before that, so you know that I had made like RPGs that had kind of that active time battle system in them. So I think that was so strongly in my head that when I was like, oh, I'm going to adapt a board game to a video game, that was like so natural for me to do it that way. And yeah, I mean, I do think it's I'm really proud of Coin Crypt. I think it's an awesome game. I'm not trying to say like, oh, it would have been good if only I changed this thing about it. It's more just like looking back at
thing, right? Like,
yeah.
Everybody feels that way about like everything they've made like 5-10 years down the line, right? Like, that just makes sense. Okay, cool. That leads me really nicely onto playtesting and balancing. Physical card games like, say, Magic have the luxury of doing like rounds of playtesting with hundreds of people, or cumulatively gathering data from thousands of matches. But what are the challenges in balancing a single player digital experience like Coin Crypt?
I would say like the greatest challenge that this game had always was for onboarding and just UI design in general, which is something that I really like to get into. But because it is a complicated game, there's a lot of like it's just a game full of menus basically, right? Like every decision you make is in a menu, and so a lot of those menu screens went through a lot of iteration, just trying to display the necessary information in a clear way. Like that was like so hard.
This is paramount. It's the biggest challenge, I imagine.
Yeah, and every other like aspect of the game, like when you're talking about difficulty, right? Like that stuff all filters through that, right? Because the player's viewpoint into like even what does a coin do? Which coin is better? Which coin do I take? What's this one worth? Like all that stuff is filtered through. How is this information presented to them? How much is presented to them at any given time? How quickly is it presented to them? Et cetera, right? So, I feel like all those things interact. They're like if we're going to compare to Magic, I would say this game had a lot of advantages in a lot of ways, in that because it's purely single player, I was not that interested actually in making something that had really, really excellent balance. In fact, I thought the most fun aspect of this game was when you found a combination of things that was like utterly broken and just kind of like exploded the game open. Like that's how you win a run, right? Is like you find some combination of things that works really well together, and then it's really addictive and really fun. You're just like, ooh, when I click this, and I click this, and he dies, and I click this, and I click this, and he dies. And,
yeah, I totally agree. Like it's almost got that like single player RPG compulsion to it, where it's like, you found some way to like massively overlevel yourself, and it's like, great, I'm now just steamrolling this. I'm a genius.
Totally. So I actually love those aspects of the game. And when it came to like difficulty balance, I think it was more on trying to find the strategies that were boring. Like, oh, this wins all the time, but it's not fun to do. And so trying to make those like either not as good or more fun to do. Or a strategy, yeah, like, or so if something's just like so strong that you would always do it, and it made every enemy trivial, right? Like that's the kind of stuff that I would be trying to identify to take out, just because you want to have some kind of puzzle. Like you want players to sort of find their way to new things every time they play. That's like the benefit of the roguelike aspect of it. So, those are kind of the angles that I was approaching it from. Was like trying to like, I know it's like broken a lot of the time, but like we're going to try to make it like as fun within the space of being broken as possible, because that's like to get just that right amount of fun broken.
Yeah.
Is perfect.
I mean, I'm probably showing my own hand here, but I'm not particularly good at Coin Crypt. I can probably count the number of times I've beaten it, like, with the base class on one hand. I think it's actually, like, really challenging in a very entertaining way.
Cool.
So that side of it certainly held up for me.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Well, the base class is insanely hard. Like, I don't know. Maybe I haven't beaten with the base class. I don't know.
I tend to stick with the wizard because you can copy your coins, and that removes like a dimension of thought. It frees up my like brain space a little bit more to handle it, I think.
Yes, totally. Yeah, the wizard was a good one. And then I don't know if you ever if you had the DLC for the game, but I eventually added so there's like the hero character who's like the true deck builder one. And I think they're actually really, really, really fun to play with too. And that's another one of those things where I'm just like, there was like a whole system thrown in the game of like, oh, your coins go away when you use them. And it was just sort of like, this makes every decision really interesting. But like, they're just so, like, this game is so full of things like that. Like, so full of things that are pulling on your brain that you have to think about. Like, to the point where you really can't think, like, you cannot think about every outcome of every decision you make, right? Like using a coin is like, you just lost some money, you just lost that coin forever. Maybe you're not going to get it back, but maybe it also changed your alignment with some of like the deities or some, and like, was it the right amount of damage to use for how much health you had? Because I had other coins that were weaker, like all this stuff. Yeah.
Right. Yeah, I remember when I first played it, like, I thought some of these elements were a little bit opaque, but then the more I played it and the more it got its hooks into me, the more I realized, oh, actually, like, it encourages me to branch out of the original playstyle I want to come into it with. So, for example, like, I tend to go into deck builders very aggressively as a genre, but I did find myself encouraged to choose different classes or, like, just experiment with different deities to see what kind of benefits they confer upon me. And yeah, you find yourself playing in a way that you never would, because you don't really have the time to make proper decision building a lot of the time. And you're like, oh, actually, I prefer being defensive. I've discovered something new about myself with the pressure of time.
Yeah, that's I never thought about it that way, but that is like a big plus of it being the way that it is, because that's been true from my experience too. Like that's how I would find fun stuff, is like the game just throws coins at you, and you're just like trying to pick the best of what you're getting. And you're making decisions so fast that sometimes you throw away something. You're like, shit, I really wanted to keep that. But then it ends up being like, oh, but the ones I didn't use, actually, like, it's kind of useful if I use it this way and with these two. And
yeah. In my case, I'm like just completely monkey brained. And anytime it's got like the little new tag next to it, I'm like, well, the decision's made for me. I just have to get the new coins. Okay, that actually leads me really nicely into the next question I had. I'm about 11 games deep into this chronology project I'm doing, but compared to a lot of the stuff that came after it, and even like big names like Slay the Spire, I find that Coin Crypt is like really dense and full of just stuff. Like, by my count, if you add the DLC, you've got around 300 coins, you've got 27 character classes, you've got a deity system, a blessing system. There is so much in Coin Crypt, and like it's still impressive 10 years later, I think, that it's got all this stuff to it. I'm curious, like, are you still happy with the variety and balance it's got, or is there anything you'd like to have done differently about that?
I think I leveraged like I'm really proud of all of the things in it. I think they're really, really cool. And I think I leveraged like the amount of space that like once I had that idea for this game, like, because it was like deck building roguelike was also not a term that existed. I added that tag to the game actually only relatively recently, like in the last couple years, because I realized like, oh, like this is a whole genre now. I should like tag my game in it.
How did you refer to it at the time, out of curiosity?
I called it a card game roguelike is what I called it. Okay, I think. Cool. So really similar. It was just like the deck building ended up being the term that people pulled. I mean, like, which it also is. It also is. But so having that idea, I feel like I just stumbled into this massive like underground cavern that like I could not see the edge of in every direction. It was just like everything I do is such a like we're like just something cool happens, right? Anytime I combine any two things in this space, something cool happens. Like another fun game mechanic comes out. And I was just like, I don't know, yeah, a kid in his Halloween candy. I was just pulling stuff everywhere and putting everything I could put into it because I just have this feeling, like, if I don't do this, no one else will, you know? Like, I just wanted to find every corner and every little thing.
It's like one of the true wonders of indie game development is you have to find your own scope. And, you know, I suppose it's really easy to overextend yourself, but given that Coin Crypt had such a small team, like, if I remember right, it was just you on development and then somebody on art, somebody on music.
That's exactly right, yeah.
But yeah, like I'm really impressed with like the scope it has, but also how manageable it still is.
I think that like if I had been like the early access thing, I think also speaks to how that process. What like it was like it started small and I just kept on adding stuff, and it was the kind of game that was very receptive to things being added to it. Like I think almost never ever did I add something to the game and then later be like, it's not very good and take it out. Like everything I put in ended up staying somewhere. If that makes sense.
Yeah, that follows on from that logic of you saying the fun of it is finding out how to break it in a way that you enjoy, right? Going through that Tumblr devlog, there were like loads of people who'd like given you like suggestions for coins, and some of your responses were like, "I really like the sound of this. I'll see if I can integrate this in some way." That's wonderful.
Yeah, every idea was like could be a good idea, right? Like, and then everything could go into the game. That was kind of how it felt. I think like you asked if I'm like happy with it, and I think that like I like again, this is something like with hindsight and history, like if with a different, I could see approach. Like, I mean, that's what games do nowadays. Like people who make good deck building roguelikes nowadays, they have a very clear vision of what the genre is. They know like there's a lot of good games out there that have already done lots of stuff, and so people who make new games nowadays in this genre, I think they tend to like be a lot more methodical and selective about what they put in. And like I think that's a process that can benefit a game because there's like of the 27 character classes in Coin Crypt, maybe like 10 of them are awesome, and like then another 10 of them are like cool, and then there's like 5 or 7 of them that are kind of like, I don't know if this really needed to be here. Like it's just a weird idea. It didn't quite work as intended. Like it never was quite that fun, but I kept it in anyway. Like so I think there's some amount of like just like kind of crust of stuff that just kind of stayed there because it was all thrown in. And I don't regret doing it that way. Like it was really, really fun to make. And there's so many, like with all the ideas that are in there, lots of them are really, really good. But yeah, I think, I guess I think the game very accurately reflects the process that went into making it, right? Like it just, you can feel the pure energy and joy that I had just like throwing stuff into this pot and seeing what ingredients tasted.
Yeah, I think that's a really nice way of putting it as well. I feel like some games in this genre, you can like feel like months and months or years of like iterative design, but also there's nowhere near like the scope to just mess around that Coin Crypt has. And, it's different flavors for different types of people, but again, I do admire just how much pure stuff you can pull off in Coin Crypt. It is hilarious at times.
Thank you.
All right. So kind of like moving on to like somewhat more recent stuff. I wrote this next question out because I wanted to like express it in a particular way, but like let me know if like you lose the thread anytime I say this. But in 2017, you gave a talk about your game Wandersong at Full Indie Summit, where you said that the focus was on creating a game with an emotional connection. You mentioned that your earlier games, Coin Crypt among them, revolved more around creating entertaining gameplay systems that make the player feel smart, skilled, or cool for engaging with them well. But your more recent games, like Chicory, focus on being like museums of playful interactions, and that challenge isn't always a requisite for entertainment. I think that many roguelike deck builders rightfully focus on mechanics first, but story and lore elements are often a very distant second. I think Coin Crypt has some very appealing characters, and its world suggests that there's more going on to it than it ever really explicitly talks about in game. But my question is, what have you learned in your recent games like Wandersong and Chicory that might help reconcile the emotional deficit, so to speak, in roguelike deck builders?
That is an awesome question. Yeah, I mean, I don't like. Again, I don't like. I am proud of Coin Crypt as it is. Then, like, I wouldn't like want to change it, but I have sometimes thought about like going back to similar systems and doing something that's a little more character based and story based. Honestly, nowadays, like, there are so many good roguelikes. That like, okay, I like Inscription exists now,
It
and like
does.
and is like such an awesome showcase of how you can do storytelling in a roguelike game. And actually, just yesterday, my friends came out with a game called Cobalt Core, which is another roguelike game that features like really, really awesome storytelling. They approached it from, and I would say even more like whereas Inscription is like it has a very, very kind of linear style of storytelling. It's not a drag. I'm not going to insult Inscription, but it's definitely like at some point it sort of jettisons the deck building stuff to tell you a story about stuff that uses deck building, and I think
Right.
that is an awesome way to do it. Cobalt Core is also interesting to me because it does not do that same thing. It is like an actual just like pure Slay the Spire board game, repeatable forever deck building game that also has story elements that slowly kind of like unfurl and lots of different characters that interact while you're playing. So they did some really, really, really cool, interesting structural stuff with the open-ended nature of deck building games. You can look at actually Hades would probably be, I mean, not a deck builder, but an awesome use of like repetitive game structure stuff and still telling a really compelling story and showing compelling characters in that space. So those games I think are all perfect examples of like what's inspiring to me now if I think about how to marry storytelling with deck building games, and they probably better reflect what you can do with it than what I would have done if I was trying to like remarry those concepts together before they did or something.
Mhm.
But yeah, as I am very excited about that marriage in general. I think there's a lot of interesting space to uncover there because like as human beings, like we just love stories. Deck building games like are really, really fun already, and I think there's been really adequate exploration of all the different things that you can do with it and what is fun about them. And yeah, I think like any game that comes out that's like any game that's gonna be an exciting roguelike deck building game that comes out next, it's actually gonna like push the genre forward or get people excited in a new way. I think the way they're going to do that is by finding new ways to tell stories in the space and like to build more like emotional resonance in the experience. Which yeah, like I said, people are already doing, and I expect that there will be more of it. And yeah, I'm excited.
Yeah.
I'm excited to play them.
Awesome. Oh, that's a brilliant answer. Thank you.
Mm.
Okay. So on my website, when I write about games like Coin Crypt, I like to end the posts by choosing 2 or 3 standout cards that I felt were significant either for the gameplay, the art design, or really any reason, like just something that stood out to me. I'm the kind of weirdo who likes the flavor text on cards and will like choose stuff just because it made me laugh or smile or it seemed like narratively resonant.
Okay.
And I would love to know, like you being the developer, what are your picks for like standout coins from Coin Crypt? Like, which are the ones that have stuck with you? Ones that you're happy to have put in there?
It's because there's so many that are kind of like different, like okay, like for example, like there's do you know the deity Looney in the game?
Yes.
Like
Yep.
okay, so many of their coins, I think like what I'm not sure exactly which would be the one that I would pick, but definitely one of them because they were so weird. Uh and like yeah, I very like when I came up with it, I was very excited about it. I don't even know if in the long run those ones landed, but um yeah, I liked those ones a lot. And okay, the other one that is probably still my favorite was one from the DD like Uguya, and she had a bunch like she would give you a status effect that would let you cast more coins at the same time. Um,
Yes.
and I love that shit. It's so like I don't know. Yeah, it's like stupid, but it's really really fun. And like just stacking those like I would play games where I would have like nothing but just coins that let me cast more coins, and I couldn't even do and I would like throughout my entire deck, realizing I never even took something that could do damage. But I have like so many coins flying in the air that are all just giving me more coins to fly up in the air, and yeah, I just love that feeling. It's so fun.
Yeah, I can totally get behind that. I just wanted to throw out as well, by the way, that because Coin Crypt uses coins instead of cards, I think there's a lot of ingenuity in the design of them. Because, as you said earlier, this being like a very fast-paced game where like you're having to make snap decisions constantly, you need to be able to read coins and kind of remember what they do at a moment's notice. You can tooltip over them, but I really like the thought that went into the UI stuff of like, all right, healing coins are generally blue. What else? Attacking coins are generally red. If a coin's got a sharp edge, it's going to do some kind of damage, most likely. All those like little visual clues that you don't even realize that the game is feeding to you, that you get a knowledge of. I think that's a really cool alternative to like just the stereotypical literal cards we get in most deck builders now. Like, I wish there was more of that.
Yeah, thank you. I again, it was like a total accident. I almost wonder if I was coming into it today, if I would have even had the same like it's like seeing all these other games that are so cool. I don't even know if I would have had the same ideas if I was like being inspired by what's come out now. But yeah, I mean, I at the time I was really proud of that idea, and it was really central to like what was exciting to me about the game. Like I mentioned earlier on, like Yu-Gi-Oh being inspiration, and it was very much like when I was starting, like when I like for example, like before it was coins, I was thinking about like jelly beans, or like I was trying to like think of like or like pins or buttons or like just pocket. Like I was trying to think of like what's a fun thing that you could collect a lot of that like the world could revolve around in some meaningful way. You know, like that was like what I was trying to figure out, and I landed on coins as the thing. But there's like it could have gone a lot of different ways, and I don't even know if I would have even been asking the question that way or thinking about it that way if not like for the fact that I just didn't have reference to pull from for that like even structure, right?
Right. Oh, that's awesome. Also curious, are there any character classes that you gravitate towards, or any that you're happy to have put in there?
You mentioned the wizard who rules. The
Right.
one, yeah, I think that's like the wizard is really good, and the witch also, who I think was before the wizard, but I really liked her a lot. But I think the ones that I was most excited about were the ones that I added at the end, the DLC ones, because those were made upon reflection of like everything that worked and didn't work from the first ones, and even actually, okay, among the DLC classes, there's some really weird ideas that I don't know, like if that really landed, but like the hero class, who's just a straight deck builder, I think is probably actually like if I was going to play the game today, I might now. You make me excited about it again. But the hero class is like the one that I would probably go back and play first because they I think feel actually shockingly well balanced, and they kind of feel like how the game is supposed to be to me. Like it's and like it's still tension. There's still time based stuff. There's still the risk of like running out of coins, and every aspect of the game is still there, but I feel like they better control like how much you have to deal with at a given time, and I just really like how the game is paced when you're playing as them.
Hero alone is worth the price of admission for the DLC, I think. Like, that is a really fun character class, and like as you say, like rebalances things in a way that makes it seem a little more like a conventional roguelike deck builder. I don't necessarily think that Coin Crypt is the type of game that has to fit any kind of like mold or formula, but I think it is a pretty good way into to wrapping your head around it for people who may struggle with the base classes.
Yeah, I think putting that one in the DLC. I mean, it was just I needed money.
Fair enough.
That's what happened. But like in like I feel like that would have been a really awesome like that's a character that like should have been in the base game, and someone in the base game should have been in the deal. You know, like that. That's like they feel so like basic to like I think what makes this game good. So. But I mean, it is what it is. Yeah,
Nice.
It's not like it's that expensive either. It's just like
No.
It was just like it took me that long to get to that character. Basically, I had to make everything else first, and then it was like, okay, I figured it out now. This is Coin Crypt.
All right, that was cool. All right, my final real question is that now that the game is 10 years old, are there any thoughts you've had about its place in this subgenre or your career that you'd like to use this chance to express now?
I mean, I don't. Yeah, like I want to say thanks to you actually for even recognizing it as being like an early deck building roguelike game because yeah, pretty much no one ever does. I don't like, and I think it's actually pretty fair that people don't like talk about it that way, because from my understanding, a lot of the big games that came out after it, like a lot of the designers just had not heard of Coin Crypt. I think the people who made Slay the Spire did play Coin Crypt, but I don't think they particularly liked it or anything. So like, I'm not like I cannot claim that I like really invented the genre like that, or like I'm the reason that anything else happened. I think it very much was like a cool idea that came out, and then separately a lot of other really cool ideas came out, and like a whole other conversation started that like without Coin Crypt being in the room really. And that's what ended up becoming like the genre that we know today. So that is kind of how I feel about it. I'm still really proud of it as a game, and like there's a part of me that definitely like sometimes wishes like, oh, like I wish that more people had known about it when it came out, or like that people could see like how relevant it was to stuff that came later. But on the other hand, like I do feel that like later games that came out totally eclipsed it. Like I think Slay the Spire is probably just a better game. I think it's a totally different game. Maybe it's not fair to compare.
It's apples and oranges.
It's apples and oranges. Yeah, like that might be true, but like like I guess
They're just in the same bowl.
now like with history being what it is, like do I think that people need to go back and play my game to really understand the genre? Like I don't really feel that. So but I'm really proud of it too. Yeah. Yeah, I mean I feel very two ways about it, you can see, right? Because I'm really proud of it. Like I want more people to play it, but like yeah, I also recognize that like there's a lot of other stuff going on in the space that like isn't really relevant to it. So I don't know. I don't know if that answers your question.
No, it does. That's fantastic. Yeah. All right, we've got about like 2 minutes before we get unceremoniously chucked out of this call. So I'd like to wrap up just by letting you tell us where we can find you online if you wish to be. And what's next for Wishes Unlimited? Because you've got a new game around the corner, if I'm not mistaken.
I do. So my website's at greg.style, and we're making a game called Beastie Ball now, which is an RPG game. And I do think that actually a lot about this game, like the things that are cool about it did actually start from Coin Crypt, because Coin Crypt was like my most intense, serious, like look into RPG and board game mechanics, and Beastie Ball is like totally an expansion on a lot of those same ideas, in a totally different genre, but the way that different elements mix together and the way that like all the game mechanics kind of come together, I think like I'm very, very, very excited about how it works in the new game. I think if you liked Coin Crypt, if you're somebody who's coming into this now, then like Beastie Ball I think is going to speak to you a lot more, like just as much basically, and I think is like a more curated and a better constructed idea that like uses some of the same ideas from Coin Crypt. So yeah, I'm really excited about it, and also has really fun little guys, like creatures that have personalities and become friends and stuff. So
I can see the through line there. I had a quick go at the demo last night actually, and I'm very attached to build it. That is a beautiful bit of monster design. And again, somehow made me realize, like, oh, I like playing defensively. I've learned new things about myself playing your games. It is quite interesting. All right,
awesome.
Okay. And very late congratulations on the BAFTA win for Chicory in the family category. By the way,
thank you very much.
Amazing work. Thank you so much for giving me some of your time, and can't wait to see what comes next.
Awesome. I'm excited to see this interview. I'll be sharing it because it is pretty meaningful to me. Like I'm really excited that you wanted to talk to me about it. So thank you very much.
Thanks. It's meaningful to me too. Like this is like mind blown. Like kind of like starstruck over like, oh, awesome! I've got to talk to the guy. Coin Crypt. All right, sweet. Thanks so much, Greg. Take care.
Thank you.
And I'll show you this before I put it up.
Okay. Okay. Cool. Yeah. Great. Have a nice day.
Thanks. You too. Take care.